Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday night where I am, Thursday for many of you. Bitcoin just peaked below 50K a couple hours ago at the time of this recording, and who knows, by the time I'm done, it may already be back above 50K or it could sink below 49K. We'll have to see how it goes. But as of right now, right around 49.8, so right on that edge. I'm opening this video by talking about Bitcoin circulation, and this whole video will be based on Bitcoin because it's obviously a main marker of the health of crypto. So many coins are going to live and die by the ability for Bitcoin to stay propped up or even thrive. So that's what we're going to take a brief look at today, just like we did a couple days ago for Ethereum. So here we're looking at the NVT model for Bitcoin. And what we're looking at specifically is the latest bars showing whether the amount of unique tokens circulating on the BTC network is in a very healthy place, moderate place, or potentially not so great place. And as you would intuitively expect, green indicates that we're in a very healthy area. We're obviously in a short sample size. This is just the first 7 full day, actually 8 full days of data since it's past December 8th in terms of UTC time. So this is 8 days of data, and we're looking at the first bright green really since way back in December 2017, and that's a very good sign. That being said, we're talking about around a quarter of the total month. So whether this can keep up, we're going to have to see. It depends on whether this bar here stays below these 4 lines. This blue line is the all-time circulation line over time, taking the average of the past 5 years. The red line here is showing the 16-month moving average. Yellow is 11-month moving average, and green is 6-month moving average. I used those specific trend lines after doing quite a bit of back testing to see about what is fair to get good estimates of market health and allow for the growing supply of Bitcoin over time. You'll notice these bar heights are rising, but a red bar here, or actually, I guess, a green bar these last 2 months in October and November, the same height back here was actually red, and that's because trend lines have moved up over time. So hopefully that all makes sense. That being said, very bullish indicator right now for circulation. So that's a good way to kick off this video. They won't all be bullish, but this one is. And this one kind of reiterates what we're looking at on the NVT model. It's using this same metric, essentially, the token circulation, which is measuring like I said, the amount of unique BTC on the network moving around. So it excludes things like wash trading that might create unnecessary noise in the data. So we really like this metric. And as you can see, the 7-day trend line here is the highest it's been in at least the last 6 months. If I go back to the last year, you'll see that it did go, actually, no, I have to go a little further back because it recently passed the trend line back in late May. So the last time the trend line was actually this high was in January now. We're talking about more or less about an 11-month high in terms of circulation on just a 7-day moving average. That's pretty significant, and that's exactly why you're seeing such a green bullish indication here after 2 semi-bullish months here. And before that, obviously, we had a ton of volatility, and as the model was suggesting, we were not getting enough token circulation to keep up with where the market cap was at that time. So that's a little synopsis of circulation. We'll go right into market cap. Let me full screen these now. MVRV, you typically want to capitalize when the average trading returns are low, and that's exactly where we are right now. We're right around negative 10% or so in terms of the average 30-day trade returns on the network. Typically, the really, really big opportunity zone happens right around here at about 15%. And you can see it only happened about once in the last year, and that was in May, and where we had several bottom indicators. Of course, it did continue to slide down, but it did rebound here, right? So we had a big rebound that pushed the MVRV into positive range. And once it was in positive range again, you can see it, the price slid down until eventually right here when the MVRV was at about -9%. That's when we had this huge surge in price. So right now, all things considered, it is a better than average time to buy based on probability and history in the past. So yeah, I'll leave it at that for now. 30-day MVRV looking good. Next up, social volume and dominance. I'll keep this one brief. Social volume is picking up. Obviously, that is due to the rising polarization and interest in Bitcoin right now, with prices dropping the way they have over the last month or so, really since mid-November. So people are now wondering if it's time to buy the dip or whether it's time to panic sell, and this creates an increase in social volume. You can see here on social dominance, though, the percentage of discussion compared to the percentage of discussion of Bitcoin compared to the top 100 market cap assets is actually staying very low. And that's interesting because altcoins are still getting a lot of interest. Ethereum has kind of been leading above Bitcoin for around the last 4 or 5 days or so, pretty short sample size, but um, with Bitcoin being kind of boring right now, if not disappointing for many people, the percentage of discussion is declining. And that is typically a slightly worrisome sign. You want Bitcoin to always be getting a decent amount of attention, because if it's not, and everyone is obsessed with altcoins, that is when Bitcoin can kind of pull the rug out from all of the altcoiners and really send prices down throughout crypto. So that isn't necessarily a universal rule. We did see it here, back in early May, right before the price drop happened, and then of course social dominance went up as everyone said, "Whoa, what's going on here?" So just keep that in mind. It'll happen sometimes. Sometimes drops just happen for a variety of different reasons, but this would be one of the concerning yellow flags that I'm seeing so far. Next up, funding rate. We'll keep this one brief. Typically, when things are high like this means longs are paying shorts to an excessive degree. When the marks are low like this, that means shorts are paying longs to an excessive degree. Just like MVRV, when it's getting high, that's an indication of greed and prices correct. When it's low, that's an indication of fear and prices tend to bounce. Right now, we're pretty much flat. The Binance funding rate, as you can see there on the right, pretty much dead even. People are kind of stagnant, waiting for where a more mid or long-term trend will form next. So not a lot happening in either direction. FTX, pretty much same thing. It's right near zero right now, and that's an indication that just like on Binance, there's a little stagnation, a little bit of fear to do anything too drastic right now after this big drop, biggest since May, obviously. And this is a neutral signal. Daily active addresses looking better. Obviously, this is still, there's a little bit of meat on the bone to get back to where we were prior to the first big dip that happened in early to mid-May. But daily active addresses are climbing. If I put this on a trend line, which you can do just by highlighting the metric, go into indicators, we'll do a moving average of 30 days in this case, and we can clearly see that DAA bottomed out right after the bounce started, and it's been rising ever since late July, really. So we're on, give or take about a 4.5 month trend of being on a slight rise, if you want to call it this. Once you get here, it's really sort of flattened out. And this flattening out period likely could have contributed to the fact that there was this correction, because we were on this long rise, and then if you're watching right here where the trend is starting to, no longer see rising numbers, these are the kinds of times where you do see a correction, and then the market has to dictate whether they're going to react or not. And they really haven't. We're seeing about the same active addresses here as we were seeing when we hit our 68K all-time high. And that's interesting to me. We're not seeing a decline, so it's not a huge fear type of situation going on, but there's certainly not more addresses now participating in the markets with this reduced market cap that we're seeing now compared to a month ago. Next up, mean dollar invested age. When you're seeing a decline like this, that's indicative of healthy, dormant tokens moving addresses. When you're seeing rises like this, that means things are starting to get stagnant and the average age of coins are starting to, well, they're starting to age and they're getting older and stagnant within the same addresses that they've been in. So we did see this dip here prior to the not one, but two all-time highs that occurred. And it's been kind of flat ever since. We're not seeing just a super consistent rise, but at least over the last, since December started, it's been a bit of a concerning rise once again. This is more of a macro indicator though. If I had to call this anything, it would be just barely bearish because it's rising again. But we'd need to see more of a like really long sustained rise like this to really be worried. Weighted sentiment. So this is always fun. Ignore this bottom one here. This is the current bar that is still compiling right now. But looking right here, we can see that for the most part, for the last month, things have stayed above this zero line, indicating there is slightly more positivity than average when discussions are had about Bitcoin. This is calculated by simply multiplying the social volume, the overall mentions of Bitcoin on the platforms we track, Discord, Telegram, Twitter, Reddit, and pro traders chats, multiplying all those by the actual ratio of positive versus negative sentiment that's calculated by our proprietary algorithm. So all things considered, slightly concerning due to the fact that we're not seeing quite the amount of fear that we should, that usually dictates bottoms. So like right here, for example, super negative weighted sentiments, and then the price bounces and things get positive again. Here, even though the price was really dropping hard, just like we saw back in late May, people were kind of defiant and said, okay, this is just a dip buy opportunity. I'm not worried. And then the price kind of eventually dropped a little further until people actually did get worried. And when people get worried, that's when the bounce happens. So overall, mostly neutral, but we haven't seen any real days of fear in the last month. And that should be something to fear a little bit. All right, whale activity. I know this is a very popular one. I'm going to really briefly, this pink line is the 100 to 1,000 address line and the percentage held by these addresses. And then the red line is the 1,000 to 10,000. Yeah. Red is 1,000 to 10,000, so they're the larger whale addresses. And then what we usually do is combine them into this yellow line here, which is just looking at the total supply held by all whale addresses holding between 100 and 10,000 Bitcoin. Right now, we saw this big bounce here on the dip. Let me full screen, give you a little clearer view. Yeah, so we saw this drop here prior to the big price drop. So if you were watching what whales were doing, this would be an indication that they were taking some profit here toward the turn of December, going from November to December. And then once the price did drop, look how they just immediately started scooping things up. The price bounced. And once we hit this price bounce of around 51.5, it looks like they're taking profit again, and it's dropping. It didn't drop down to 48.78% like it was on the third, but they're holding just 0.12% more than that right now. So they're within range and they're definitely moving down again. So that's going to be a concern as well. We'll have to watch closely over the next week to see if this trend continues. And if we see something like this, where it's just a long sustained profit take from these whales, that would be a really, I'd call it a pretty sizable yellow flag to note in your trading strategies. And again, I say this on all my calls, does as well. And then on our This Week in Crypto calls, we always say nothing we're saying here is investment advice. We're showing you exactly what the metrics are telling us, whether it's a bullish or bearish signal. We've already covered a few of each. This one, again, would be a bit of a bearish signal. We'll skip the DAA divergence. It still has some work to do. I do think that this one has some serious potential, but I want to work more with the devs to really get it solidified and give you a confident read. Overall, it's showing some green bars here, but I don't, due to all-time highs and things like that, it takes a little bit for this metric to really calculate super confidently. So it does help, and you can check it out on the platform, but don't put too much credence in it. Network realized profit loss. Notice how we have dipped into the negative again. There's been a lot of negative dips here as the prices declined from the all-time high. And after we had this really big dip on the the third, look how the price immediately bounced. Where my cursor is, see how it lines up perfectly with the bottom? When you see a big negative spike like that, that's a pretty good telltale sign that the network in terms of trader profitability is way deep in the red. It works similar to MVRV, where the network is trading at a loss and things have to balance out eventually. Just like we saw here prior to the initial all-time high in April, notice these huge positive spikes indicating the network was trading too much in profit. So right now, we're back into trading at a loss. And this would be a mildly bullish signal because we're back in the negative. And as you can see, for most of the year, there hasn't really been a lot of time spent in the negative up until recently. You know, we're kind of seeing a repeat right now of mid-June to early July, I should say mid-May to early July, and getting quite a few negative spikes right now. And these are the types of negative spikes you can take advantage of. That being said, it isn't a huge spike like we saw just a few days back. So take this as just a very mild sign that the network is trading at a loss right now and could be a slight opportunity if you're a shorter term swing trader. Exchange flow balance, pretty much neutral now, but look how there were 3 big negative spikes here. This is calculating the, let me check what the interval is. It should be on, let me put it on 1 day. So yeah, this big negative spike here, followed by the November 30th spike that happened before it, these were 2 big outflow spikes, indicating that a lot of people are moving their coins to cold wallets right now and keeping them off of exchanges. And this is actually a good thing. This means that there is less risk of a potential sell-off occurring because less coins are on exchanges. Alternatively, if you see these big spikes in the positive direction, that means people are moving their coins onto exchanges, and that can be worrisome for Bitcoin. So another slightly bullish signal here. Last but not least, supply on exchanges. Continued downfall of coins on exchanges, just relating to what we just saw on the balance graph. It's clear that we're getting a lot more outflow than inflow right now. And there's just been a steady decline in coins on exchanges in terms of the entire supply of Bitcoin. And there's actually been a decline of another 2.3% since mid-May. So we're talking about 7 months now of supply on exchanges really dropping hard. And that's a very good sign. In terms of very long term, if you're worried about the 1 or 2 or 3 year plan of your holdings, if you're just keeping it in a cold wallet, this is a pretty nice sign that there can't be too much of a sustained sell-off when coins are continually being moved away from the place where these sell-offs happen. So I hope that makes sense. Hope you guys enjoyed this quick snapshot of how Bitcoin's looking right now. Definitely like and subscribe if you like these kinds of videos, and I will talk to you all on Friday.